In the spring of 2013, my dad and I decided to take a road trip to Florida. The trip was meant to serve many purposes. First and foremost, I desperately wanted to see my sisters, who live in the South, especially my sister Laura, who had just given birth to a daughter a few weeks before. Secondly, I found that my dad was able to get discounted tickets through his job to Universal Orlando Resort and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the closest thing to heaven that there is on Earth. And last but certainly not least, we found out that our favorite baseball team, the New York Yankees, would be playing in Tampa Bay during our trip, so we got tickets to see them as well. I can't even express in words how excited I was for this trip. I'd like to say that the excitement was mostly for seeing my family, but let's be honest, it was totally Harry Potter world. Before I go into detail about our adventures, I should probably explain that my dad is in the Air Force, and has been for over 20 years. One of the perks we enjoy as a military family is the ability to stay overnight in the hotels that are on every active duty military base. This served a dual purpose for me, because I plan on making the Air Force my career once I graduate. It was an opportunity for me to scope out the places that I very well could be living someday. It was also a chance for my dad and I to bond over a common interest. He enjoyed showing me around the different bases, especially considering he had worked at several of them throughout his career. Anyway, back to the trip. By the time we left, we had found new things we wanted to do along the way. We started out by stopping in Springfield, Illinois, to see the house where President Lincoln lived. As you can see, it was a very enlightening experience. Next, we stopped in St. Louis, Missouri, and saw the famous arch. It was so much bigger in real life than I thought it would be. We had the opportunity to go to the top, but I politely declined. The next stop on the trip was New Orleans, Louisiana, more specifically, Bourbon Street. This was perhaps my biggest disappointment. Let me just tell you, Bourbon Street is dirty, and it smells. Like, it actually smells. I can understand why this man is so upset. We left after only about a half an hour, and I don't regret not staying any longer. From Louisiana, it was finally time to head to Jacksonville to see my sisters. It was such an exciting time. My sister Laura had been trying for years to have a child, so when she finally had Olivia, it was like a miracle. I was so lucky to get to hold her only a few weeks after she was born. This is her now. She's over a year old, and I haven't seen her at all since the trip. Living so far away from my sisters has always been hard. My oldest sister Rhonda has two girls who are 18 and 13, and sadly, I saw very little of them when they were growing up. I treasured the time I had with Olivia because I knew I wasn't going to get the opportunity to see her very often. We spent several days with both of my sisters, and then it was time to say goodbye and head further south. We stopped in Tampa Bay to see the Yankees play the Rays. I had a fantastic time seeing all of my sports idols in person for the first time. And it was even better because this was also the first Yankee game that my dad had been to. I was so happy that we got to share the experience. Is this starting to drag? Don't worry, the best is yet to come. That's right, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. We got to the park as soon as it opened and headed straight for Hogsmeade. It was amazing. They had built an entire little village inside the park. I got to see Ollivanders, Honeydukes, Hagrid's cabin, and we even got to eat at the Three Broomsticks. After lunch, we took a tour of Hogwarts Castle, and there were even performances put on by actors to mimic the stories. I swear I could have moved there if they let me. I never wanted to leave. We stayed for the entire day to make sure we got to see everything. It was truly a magical experience. Now it was time to head back north, and our final sightseeing stop was Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta, Georgia. Now, as I mentioned before, we had been staying at various Air Force bases throughout our trip, but this one was special. When I was 3 years old, my mom, dad, two sisters, and I lived at Moody for 3 years. Since we lost my mom in 2007, we cherish memories of our time as a family even more. That's why this base and the surrounding area is very special to my family. My dad spent the whole day showing me around the base and the town. I got to see the places we lived and where I went to school. I even vaguely remembered some of the places he was showing me from my childhood. It was such a special time for us, and I know my dad really enjoyed getting to share those memories with me. From Georgia, we drove straight home, and thus ended one spectacular week of making memories with my dad. When I first sat down to plan our trip, I had no idea it would be so meaningful to me. I was excited to see my family and to see Orlando in the baseball game, but I had no idea how special it would be to get to share that time with my dad. We've always been really close, and this trip really solidified an even deeper bond between us. As I mentioned before, I will soon be moving out and moving on with the next phase of my life, and I'm really glad that I will always have these memories to look back on and make me smile.